We are now joined live via Zoom by Colonel retired Miri, the Senior Fellow of the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. Good evening. Good to see you again. So we got some developments. What do you make of these recent developments? To say reportedly 90% there, it's the first time we've heard anything like that. Is this something we could take to the bank and feel that we may get through the finish line?
We're talking with a terror organization, Emily. We're not talking with the bank. And this terror organization views our people, human beings, as, I say it very harshly, they literally see them as something to be exchanged for. They want something for it. They don't view them as human beings. And in that sense, I never believe them. Having said that, they want something in return. And it's already been, as we know, 443. We're almost at the 444th day of this impossible war, meaning if they don't get anything, then they're also losing. So in that horrific sort of negotiation with the terror organization, there's no question that this is further than we've ever gone before. But the question is, can we pay what they are going to demand? And that is not different from October 7th when they did the heinous attack that it is today at the end of December 2024. So I do think that there's more than in the past, and I still think that they're a terror organization, and I never believed them, so I won't hold my breath.
Of course. And what about the reports that Hamas says that they have delivered some signs of life? Together, the hostage family is not confirming that yet. It's obviously a very, very sensitive subject. What more do you know?
I would look at it in the following way. We need to know who's there. Emily, it's 443 days. They've never told us who's there. They've given very few evidence of who's alive. And then they said in this last week, and this came out of some of the Hamas leaders, that they can't deliver because they don't know where everybody is, meaning they did that attack on October 7th. They took hundreds of hostages and they don't know where they are, how they are, what their situation is. When we talk, as I said, a terror organization in the worst way possible. So what I would say in this sense is that Hamas has to show something, otherwise it won't go forward. If it doesn't go forward, Hamas doesn't get anything either. And in that sense, they will have to show some kind of evidence, certainly of the ones that we already know more about, but there are lots of those that we haven't seen any sign of life since October 7th. And we need to know that. It's a different type of negotiation if they know about them or if they don't. And that's part of what goes on. That's why it also isn't going to be over soon. That takes time. They're not in control. They don't know what's going on. And they took it as a terror organization. And literally, the hostages are probably all over the place. And now they're trying to deliver on who is where and what their situation is.
All right. Thank you very much, Colonel retired Miri. We will be back with you in a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. We are now turning to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, reportedly has been meeting with his security cabinet in northern Israel, where they are said to be discussing the situation with Syria, Lebanon, as well as the hostages and potential ceasefire deal. Defense Minister Israel Katz, during a visit to an IDF military position in southern Lebanon, threatened to, quote, crush Hezbollah's head if the terror group violates the ceasefire agreement. In other news, 2 residents of Jerusalem have been indicted for providing Hezbollah with photos and information during the war. Here is more from the statement by Defense Minister Israel Katz.
We have
pulled out the snake's teeth, and if Hezbollah does not withdraw beyond the Litani and tries to violate the ceasefire, we will crush its head. I came here to the IDF outpost, which overlooks the Shiite village of Marun Aras and Yaron, which posed a major threat to the Galilee communities, to make sure up close that the IDF's achievements in Lebanon will be maintained. We will not allow Hezbollah operatives to return to the villages of the south and re-establish the terrorist infrastructure that will pose a threat to the northern communities. We will ensure the IDF's ability to continue to forcefully enforce the reality on the ground. We have met Hezbollah with unprecedented strength. We have pulled out the snake's teeth, and if Hezbollah does not withdraw beyond the Litani and tries to violate the ceasefire, we will crush its head. We will ensure the removal of the threat and the restoration of security to allow the residents of the north to return safely to their homes.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei gave a public address today denying that the Islamic Republic is needing or using proxy forces in the Middle East. He claims that the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Islamic Jihad are driven to fight for their beliefs and faith on their own. Here's more.
The Islamic Republic does not have a representative force. Yemen fights because it has faith. Hezbollah fights because the power of faith brings it to the field. Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad fight because their belief forces them to do so. They do not represent us. If we want to act one day, we do not need a proxy force.
All right, we're back now with Colonel Retired Miri Eisen, Senior Fellow of the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. Let's first talk about the statements by the Defense Minister, Israel Katz. Is there reason to believe that Hezbollah is not going to continue to make good on this temporary or the ceasefire deal?
The ceasefire deal is about the military capability. In his own way, I think that Defense Minister Katz was talking in a general way, not just about that military capability. Hezbollah is a terror army. And contrary to what Khamenei just said, yes, there's ideology, but they get all of their weapons from the Islamic regime of Iran. Praying for the weapons does not bring them. That was me with a little cynicism about Supreme Leader Khamenei. So Minister Katz, in that sense, what he's talking about is the chance that there are going to be individuals, terrorists, who are coming back into their homes and that they won't abide by the ceasefire rules. And I absolutely think that that may happen. Hezbollah is going to try to push against it. They are Lebanese. They are Arabic Shiites who live inside Lebanon. They're not Persian-speaking Iranians in southern Lebanon. And as soon as they start coming back, and that's supposed to happen within a few weeks, right now they're still being delayed from going back to their homes, when the Hezbollah, I'm going to say locals, who happen to also be fighters, who happen to also be terrorists, come back down south, that's not going to be quiet times. It won't work easily all over the different arena. And the IDF is making a very clear-cut statement. The government is making a clear-cut statement that we're not going to allow them to go back into what happened post-2006. Easier said than done, just like I've said about the hostages. But in this case, we are taking the topographical points. We're very much preparing the terrain for the fact that we will be able to protect the north, that we won't allow the type of forces that we're seeing right now on the screen, those different Radwan forces that were the ones that were such a threat before October 7th, 2023. Israel, the IDF, in all of its capabilities, has completely degraded that threat to do that kind of an attack. But individuals will still have capabilities.
Right. And, for the Supreme Leader to say that, okay, we're not using proxy forces, we've been knowing this all along. So why even say something and why now?
Well, the Supreme Leader is totally in defense. He's going out into his crowd. He has to tell them something. The entire international community, because of what happened in Syria, is bringing up the aspect of what Iran, the Islamic regime of Iran, had invested in Syria. Emily, the numbers are impossible. The billions of dollars that the Islamic regime invested in Hezbollah, in Syria, in the different proxies, by giving them weapons, they may believe, but they needed the weapons. They needed the different capabilities. That's money that was not invested in Iran. And the people there understand that. Those voices are coming out. The absolute investment that they put into Syria, and it just overnight, December 8th, is totally gone. The soldiers that were appointed inside Syria, mainly the Revolutionary Guard forces that were in bases inside Syria, they came back to Iran. Iran officially said, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard spokeswoman in this case, she said thousands of our fighters have come back, which means that they've come back into their homes. So the Khamenei, the religious leader, he talks religion, he talks faith, he talks about the oppressed against the oppressor, but it is under that same Khamenei, don't get it wrong, that they develop nuclear capabilities, that they build the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, that they supply all of the weapons, and that they also supply that ideology at the end that both calls for our destruction and, for that matter, calls for a very broad annihilation of anything that is not their version of Islam in the world.
Okay, Miri, we'll be back with you in a moment. We're now turning to Yemen, where Houthi rebels are clearly showing no signs of backing down anytime soon. This after the U.S.'s overnight attack on a missile storage facility as well as a command center. Yet the Iran proxy group is continuing to ramp up their attacks. Here's more from i24NEWS' Lynn Plachmeyer.
Overnight, U.S. Central Command has conducted airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen's capital Sana'a. CENTCOM has released a statement saying, CENTCOM forces conducted the deliberate strikes to disrupt and degrade Houthi operations, such as attacks against U.S. Navy warships and merchant vessels in the southern Red Sea, Bab al-Mandeb and Gulf of Aden. During the operation, CENTCOM forces also shot down multiple Houthi one-way attack uncrewed aerial vehicles, anti-ship cruise missile over the Red Sea. During the strikes, 2 U.S. Navy pilots were shot down over the Red Sea in what the U.S. called a, quote, friendly fire incident. Both pilots survived, with one sustaining minor injuries. The U.S. did not elaborate on the nature of their mission. Meanwhile, the Houthis have been ramping up its attacks on Israel. On Saturday, the terror group fired a ballistic missile at Israel which landed in a playground in South Tel Aviv, injuring 16 people by shattered glass. The attack came after Israel struck all 3 Houthi ports on Thursday, killing at least 9 people. And so, with the Houthis on one side and the US and Israel on the other, this furthest front line seems to be also the furthest one from becoming quiet.
Back again with Colonel Retired Miri Eisen. You just heard this report. Listen, these Houthis since day one have been threatening to continue to do whatever they could to reach Israel. We saw what happened over the weekend in South Tel Aviv. So it seems that the Houthis really are not deterred by anything that has happened in Syria, Lebanon, or the change in the government, soon to be change in the government in the United States.
So what's amazing in that sense, again, 443 days into this, is that the Yemenite Houthis started to fire at Israel in October 2023. That's already 13 months ago. That the Houthis from Yemen have fired into Israel over 300 different types of projectiles, both what we call UAVs, different types of missiles, and they are 1,300 kilometers away. But the Houthis in Yemen are on the international shipping route that really leads from Asia to Europe. It's the fast way from Asia to Europe. You go through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits and then up through the Egyptian held Suez Canal inside Egypt. So it isn't just about Israel in this sense. What the Houthis are doing is closing down an international shipping line, which is why both the United States, but not only they, have been involved in attacks against the Houthis. And my hope is that just like Israel should not be standing alone against a Hezbollah or a Syria, the Islamic regime of Iran, or for that matter, Hamas, we should not be alone against the Houthis. And the Central Command attacking them, Israel around 3-4 years ago was moved in that sense in the relations. And we now are in the relations of the Central Command of the United States military. We are part of that. So we have a much closer relationship that's important for coordination. I would even say for cooperation. And let's hope that additional forces join in. The Houthis can't be closing an international shipping line, let alone just firing rockets, UAVs, different platforms against Israel whenever they feel like it.
Right, and also with soon-to-be President Trump coming in to office in January, he's been very vocal about the Panama Canal and shipping and imports and exports. So, like you said, I mean, this is a very important trade route that affects the entire global economy.
So it's interesting that we don't hear China as much in that sense, because it really impacts China and all of China's trade going towards Europe. And I say that because China is a very quiet stakeholder in the Middle East, and I'm surprised by that. China could have some kind of a capability in perhaps rebuilding Syria. And so at the end in the connections here, it seems right now that nobody's impacting the Houthis. And in this case, I would agree with Khamenei Khamenei, the supreme leader, he doesn't seem to be able to tell the Houthis to stop. And if he's telling them to continue, he's bringing both on the Houthis, as he's brought on Hezbollah, on the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the other proxies, yes, proxies, the different demise both inside Syria, what's happening in Iraq is not good news. These are not good things. And all of them, what ties them together is that their weaponry is coming from the Islamic regime of Iran.
Thank you very much. As always, Colonel Retired Miri Eisen, Senior Fellow of the International Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University. Have a good rest of your evening.